Greetings to all C3RF members and friends across Canada and indeed around the world, and a special welcome to the folks at Veterans for Freedom on their dedicated streaming channels as they view this video summary of the C3RF update for 13 June 2025. The title of this update is Swamped, and it begins by noting that with all the bamboozling that everyday Canadians have been subjected to over the course of the Justin Trudeau regime, it should surprise no one that these same strategies are being rolled out by a new Carney administration. Recall that the elbows up psyop, for one, was a masterstroke in changing the channel away from the very serious tariff issues of the day through the use of puffed-up hockey rhetoric. After all, and in Carney's own words, Orange Man Bad would regret his aggressive attacks on Canadian sovereignty with his 51st state remarks, not to mention his desire to, quote, break us so that America can own us, unquote. The gambit was successful in keeping major issues, like immigration policies that wreak havoc on the nation, away from the front burner, even as it failed miserably in its stated objective of dealing with unfair tariffs. What else to say as 25% levies on steel and aluminum doubled to 50% just 5 weeks after the Liberal election win. The elephant in the room that is Canada's devastating immigration policy has been a silent facet of the national political scene from day one of the Justin Trudeau administration. This devastation of what was once an immigration framework that benefited the national interest had its genesis in two major Liberal initiatives. The first was the Federal Advisory Council on Economic Growth, chaired by Dominic Barton, that recommended that annual permanent resident immigration levels rise to 450,000 by the year 2021. Dominic Barton would go on to co-author the Century Initiative with Mark Wiseman that would, incredibly, recommend policies designed to realize a national population of some 100 million by the end of the 21st century. The second initiative that set Canada on an open border path was its avid support and signature on the United Nations Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration in 2018. Between the two initiatives, Canada's population growth would become, quote, 5 times that of the OECD average and exceed that of most sub-Saharan African countries, unquote. The question becomes, will the Carney government move to reverse such reckless growth? The short answer would appear to be no. What else to think as Carney assembles a team with deep roots in its Open Borders project? These include Mark Wiseman, who, as noted above, was co-author of the Century Initiative and is now slated to be a member of Carney's Council of Advisors on Canada-U.S. relations. Then there is Lena Diab, the former provincial minister of immigration for Nova Scotia, who will operate as the federal government's new minister in that same portfolio. She hails from Lebanese immigrant parents and has an established record of expanding immigration programs. In addition, her ethnicity, quote, positions her nicely to advance the Liberals' pro-Palestinian politics and, specific to immigration, the government's temporary resident visa program for 5,000 Palestinians from Gaza, perhaps expanding the measures to introduce extended family members, unquote. As if to confirm the new Liberal government's commitment to exploding immigration levels, recent reports indicate that an incredible 817,000 newcomers have been welcomed into the country under both the permanent and non-permanent streams in the first 4 months of 2025. These fire hydrant migration flows into Canada are set to continue ad nauseum despite the utterings of a newly minted Prime Minister Carney. His promise to reduce the caps on international students and temporary foreign workers from 7.3% of Canada's population per year to 5% by 2027, for example, still leaves 2024 immigration policies and levels in place. These allowances will bring, quote, 1.14 million new permanent residents and nearly 600,000 non-permanent residents into Canada in the next 3 years, unquote. To make matters worse, Carney's numbers on caps only work if those with expired temporary residence visas actually leave the country, and that is extremely unlikely. What else to say given the fact that as many as half of these expired visa holders, quote, are awaiting permanent residency or renewal of their temporary visas, unquote. And then there is the estimated 600,000 undocumented migrants currently believed to be in country. These migration policies, including the new ones promised by the Carney administration, have placed the country within the embrace of a dangerous population trap that can be characterized as a population growth that exceeds economic growth. There can be little doubt that this is the case in present-day Canada, with the evidence of such spread across several sectors, including and especially in housing. It is in this domain that we see a housing supply deficit that has, quote, reached a new record of only one housing start for every 4.2 people entering the working age population, compared to the historical average of 1.8, unquote. One would think that given the fact that the building of enough houses to address this gap is unattainable, an answer to this problem might be found in cutting back on both permanent and non-permanent immigration levels. A prospect as noted as above that cannot be discussed and has become the elephant in the room. Lack of housing stock aside, it is critical to note that immigration policies over the past 10 years have also seen the easing of medical and healthcare rules for newcomers. Such covert initiatives have loaded the taxpayer down with less than transparent tax burdens and have been exacerbated by the fact that, quote, at some undisclosed time, the Liberals even removed the requirement for a criminal background check for processing temporary workers and international students entering the country, unquote. Such economic and security stressors have real consequences for the everyday citizen. On the economic front, while added newcomers may increase the overall GDP, the real GDP per capita has been at a standstill in Canada for the past 6 years. Meanwhile, and as noted in the last update, the crime in Canadian citizens is approaching American city levels, even as Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, notes that Canada's improperly vetted migrants present a terrorist threat to the American homeland. The fact that Canadian immigration policies could become such an elephant in the room seems unsupportable on its face. After all, when the facts and data, as noted above, reveal the dire economic and security outcomes associated with such reckless policies are finally made plain, it becomes obvious that reversals are in order. And there we have it. Perhaps the elephant needs to be ignored for just that reason. This, as there are larger plans afoot that must be shielded from closer examination. And so it is that Canadians are told that open border policies are required to enhance and unleash the positive powers of diversity, inclusion, and equality, and cannot be questioned. Indeed, the public good, not to mention that of humanity writ large, merits that we leave our old xenophobic and nationalistic cultures and traditions behind to embrace a new era of modernization through, quote, unwavering ideological embrace of the process of globalization, unquote. It's consequentialism on steroids, as the end justifies the means, even if those means include the imposition of draconian measures by centralized control and fiat. And so it is that the Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration includes directions to signatory nations to develop programs aimed at, quote, sensitizing and educating media professionals on migration-related issues and terminology, unquote. And the stopping of allocation of public funding or material support to media outlets that systematically promote intolerance, xenophobia, racism, and other forms of discrimination towards migrants. It's easy to see how such subjective standards, when complied with at the national level through legislation like Canada's Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act, could lead to the censoring of any speech critical of migrants or migration policies. Forget about the traditional expectations associated with inviting newcomers to join and contribute to the nation. As such, homogeneity and closed-mindedness in host nations will need to give way, quote, to an immigration-fueled multiculturalism, unquote. Seen in these terms, it's easy to surmise that the immigration issue is not so much a call for Canadians to open their hearts and pocketbooks as it is to close their minds and mouths. This is a critical distinction as it forces one to rethink unchallenged government assertions that Canadian nativist attitudes are the problem and it is they that need to be adjusted, forcibly if required. In doing so, identity politics have deftly been brought to the fore to use as a cudgel by elected representatives against their own constituents. Rather than this, however, would it not be more accurate to say that these same governments are waging, quote, a never-ending culture war against the bigoted people who already live in Canada, unquote. A war with everyday Canadian and his or her expectation that immigration needs to be carefully managed and controlled to promote social cohesion and the overall national, not global, interests. Perhaps it is time for Canadians to change the channel on their own minders. In closing, a reminder to join us at CanadianCitizens.org, where you can see this update in its full glory, including all of the links to all of the cited documents. Simply go to the News tab at the top of the page and select C3RF Member Updates from its drop-down menu. Until next time, this is Russ Cooper signing off, wishing you and yours much happiness and freedom from C3RF.